The docking bay lights flickered under the weight of Proxima Station's shifting gravity systems. Chief Security Officer Damon Rourke stood alone near the entrance, arms folded, eyes trained on the approaching vessel as it hissed with pressure release. He wore standard Federation combat black suitility over style, but nothing could hide the dense coil of muscle in his stance or the calm tension in his gaze. He'd read the intel packet twice. Ambassador-class cruiser. 1 alien noble on board. High priority. Political hothead. Name: Relina Kaverine. Status: highborn envoy of the Empire of Elindrith. Known for pushing boundaries diplomatic, social, and personal. The ship's ramp hissed open. She descended like the concept of arrogance. Had taken form in a crimson-skinned alien with obsidian armor hugging her lithe frame. Her expression, smooth and sharp, broadcasted disdain before she even opened her mouth. "You are the human sent to guard me?" she asked. Her voice was music with a blade tucked inside. Damon didn't flinch. "Chief Security Officer Damon Rourke, welcome aboard Proxima Station." Relina stopped 2 steps from him, clearly unimpressed. Her golden eyes scanned him, pausing deliberately on the scar along his jaw. No decorative medals, no ceremonial greeting party. How, quaint. "We don't do ceremonies during security alerts," he replied. "Last week someone tried to blow up half the hydro farm. Welcome to reality." That earned him a raised brow. A charming primitive. This may be more entertaining than expected. She stepped closer, enough that her heat rolled off her skin. Damon didn't move. "I'll assume my quarters meet expectations," she said, brushing past him. "They're guarded and isolated," Damon replied, turning to follow. "Standard Federation protocol," she smirked. "Your standard seems to lack ... elegance." Damon tapped his communicator. "Escort Team Alpha, we're heading to Sector C. Keep tight formation." As they moved through the corridor, station staff halted to observe. Most had never seen an Ilindrathi noblest, especially not one whose armor split at the sides, like ceremonial battleware, and shimmered with living metal. She walked like she owned the air. When they arrived at her quarters, she turned to Damon again. "You'll be personally responsible for my safety." "Yes, that's the assignment. I tend to test the ... capabilities of my protectors. I don't break," Damon replied flatly. "No," she said, stepping so close her breath grazed his cheek. "But I wonder if you bite." Without waiting, she turned and entered her suite. Damon stood still for 3 full seconds before muttering, "This is going to be a long week." He was wrong. It would be the longest week of his life, fanned, the one he'd never forget. The next morning brought no peace. Damon Rourke stood by the surveillance monitors, reviewing last night's perimeter scans around Ambassador Relina's suite. Nothing out of place yet. The unease in his gut didn't ease. Something about her was unpredictable. Sharp, dangerous. She hadn't left her quarters yet, but when the door slid open without a warning chime, he knew she was about to cause problems. Relina strode out like she was gliding over the station itself. This time, she wore a different ensemble, still armored, but lighter, more agile, and far more suggestive. Fabric interlaced with living metal coiled across her crimson skin, like a challenge. "I assume you've had a restful night?" she asked, already knowing the answer. "Didn't sleep. Your security feeds were lighting up with movement from the ventilation shafts." She raised an eyebrow. "And you didn't come to check on me personally?" A bold assumption that I'd still be alive. If anything had gotten in, it wouldn't have gotten out. Relina stepped closer, ignoring the nearby guards. Her golden eyes glittered like suns. "Tell me, Rourke, does the Federation train all its soldiers to hide behind protocol and sarcasm? Just the ones that survive?" Her hand lifted slowly, deliberately, and poked him in the chest, hard. "That's for ignoring me," she said. He blinked. "Excuse me. Another poke, firmer. That's for being boring. Rourke inhaled sharply, stepping half an inch closer, his voice low and flat. Stop touching me. But she didn't. A third poke, now with 2 fingers, square on his sternum. Make me. There was silence between them, heat, tension. Then Damon moved fast. He caught her wrist mid-poke, stepped in, and before she could react, he pulled her fingers up and bit down, not hard, just enough. Her breath caught, her body stiffened, not out of pain, but out of shock. Her golden eyes widened in disbelief. You, she breathed. Don't test me, Relina, Damon said, releasing her hand. I don't care who your ancestors were. Respect is earned. You want to poke? Go find a touchscreen. She stared at him like he'd dropped a live weapon at her feet. For a moment, the world seemed to pause, and then she smiled. Not a smirk, not sarcasm, a real, wide, unnerving smile. Interesting, she whispered, curling her bitten fingers. He turned away, signaling the guards to fall back as he resumed walking. But behind him, Relina's gaze never left him, not for 1 second. She was watching like a predator, discovering a new kind of prey. Curious, intrigued, hungry by midday. They'd attended a trade ceremony between 2 visiting outpost leaders. Relina was poised and cold, all calculated charm. Damon stood beside her, alert but silent, watching more than just the crowd. Every now and then, her hand would brush his as they walked. Not by accident. Every time he'd glance sideways, she'd be looking somewhere else, but the corners of her lips twitched like she was playing a private game. Back in her suite that evening, she didn't speak. She stood by the viewport instead, staring out at the stars. Then she said, without turning, most people fear a Lindrithi touch. They say we're poison. Damon leaned against the wall, arms folded. Only when you want to be. And you? She asked softly. I've been poisoned before, he replied. Lived through worse. She finally turned, her face unreadable. Why didn't you report me for the incident? Didn't feel like wasting paper on your ego. Relina tilted her head. You fascinate me, human. You're not easily intimidated, not submissive, not predictable. I'm not here to entertain you. No, she said, stepping forward slowly. But you might end up doing it anyway. Then, her fingers brushed his jaw again, this time softer. No poke, no challenge. He let her. Neither said another word, but both understood something had shifted, and neither of them could afford to ignore it anymore. The station lights dimmed as the artificial evening cycle began. Damon Rourke remained outside Relina's quarters, arms crossed, mind spinning with thoughts he shouldn't entertain. The bite had been impulsive, maybe even stupid, but it had drawn a line neither of them could now erase. Inside, Relina paced like a caged flame. The taste of his defiance lingered more than his teeth had. Her species rarely tolerated insolence. She should have filed a report, sent a complaint, but instead, she'd felt seen. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Damon's voice came. Through the doors come. Permission to enter. Granted. He stepped in, composed, but not cold. There's been a development. Unauthorized movement in the West Maintenance Wing too close to your suite for comfort. Relina arched a brow. Sabotage. Too early to tell. Could be curiosity. Could be reconnaissance. You think I'm the target? I think you're the only diplomat here with more enemies than admirers. She considered that with a smirk. You always this charming to your guests. Only the ones who poke me. She smiled again. And bite-worthy, apparently. He didn't answer, just moved to check the room's window locks and sensor grids. She watched him in silence, broad shoulders taut under his black uniform, eyes sweeping for danger like it might be hiding in shadows. Do you sleep in that armor? She asked. No. Good. She moved closer. Because I don't want a bodyguard tonight. I want company. Damon turned, his expression unreadable. Company or protection? Both. But let's not pretend one's more interesting than the other. He studied her. Not her body this time, but the flame inside her. Not arrogance now, but depth, tiredness, loneliness. He nodded once. I'll stay. A short time later, both sat in silence on her low, curved couch. The stars beyond the window glinted like frozen fire. She sipped a drink made from fermented flora of her homeworld. Damon took a swig of his protein infusion. It wasn't romantic, but it was real. Is this normal for you? She asked, voice low. Which part? Sharing a room with someone who could probably kill you in 5 moves. He glanced at her sideways. You'd have to get through 2 of mine first. She smiled without looking at him. I've never met a human like you. I've never met an Elindrathi who has to be seen. That made her pause. A beat. 2. I wasn't supposed to be born, she said suddenly. My family's bloodline was tightly controlled, engineered for perfection. I came by accident, and for a long time, I was treated like one. Damon's jaw clenched. They tried to erase you. They tried to redefine me. Her voice was even, not bitter, not broken, just real. That's why you walk around like no one can touch you, he said. Because they taught you that being untouchable was the only way to survive. Relina looked at him then, really looked. You see too much. Comes with the job. You're more than your job. Their eyes locked. He didn't touch her. Not yet. But something passed between them in the silenced burr. Then challenge. Warmer than war. Then the lights flickered. A low alarm buzzed in the distance. Damon stood instantly. Motion sensors breach, an auxiliary corridor near this sector. She stood beside him, alert, weapon. He handed her a compact stun blaster from his belt, just in case. He opened the door, scanning the corridor beyond. Nothing. Then movement. A shadow, fast and low, darting across the hallway intersection. Damon raised his rifle and signaled her to stay behind. Relina didn't. They moved together, clearing the corridor, step by step. Their footsteps light, breaths shallow, every sense sharp. At the next junction, they stopped. The lights snapped off. Total darkness. For 3 seconds. Nothing then. A flash of movement. Damon lunged, his hand catching something solid, then everything crashed to the floor. In the struggle, energy crackled. Sparks burst from a control panel. The hallway lit, in flickering red dot, and in the light he saw it. Not a person, a probe. Spy tech. Elindrathi design, but not from her house. He disabled it with a sharp twist, and it dropped limp in his grip. Relina's voice was calm. That was meant for me. Damon nodded, breath steady. Not Federation issue, and not random. She stepped close, looking at the darkened probe in his hand. My enemies have arrived. He looked at her. No, he said. They picked the wrong station. And something in her eyes lit not just with threat, but with trust. Tomorrow, she would fight with him. Tonight, she knew he was already fighting for her. The next day dawned in quiet tension. Proxima Station ran its routines, but Damon Rourke felt the weight of every breath. Something had shifted, not just between him and Relina, but in the air itself. The attack last night had been a warning. The question was, from whom? The probe was under forensic review. Damon had isolated it in the station's data vault and triple encrypted the logs. The internal AI couldn't trace it to any known group, but the craftsmanship sleek, precise, with a blood gold signature filament reeked of the Kael'dor Syndicate, assassins, smugglers, political saboteurs. Damon reviewed every entry code on Relina's scheduled appearances, reassigned guards, and rerouted to diplomatic events. Still, his instincts told him it wouldn't be enough by midday. He stood at her door again. She opened it before he could knock. I could feel you on the other side. He stepped in, closing the door behind him. I don't like the patterns I'm seeing. You mean the ones where someone wants me dead? Exactly those. Relina walked to her window, her reflection ghosted over the stars. They tried once, they'll try again, and next time, they won't send a probe, they'll send people. Good, she said, with a flash of her old arrogance. I'm better at handling people. Damon didn't smile. You're not alone in this. Her eyes softened. I know. He moved beside her, lowering his voice. I've seen Kael'dor work before. They don't miss twice. And I don't run twice, she replied. Their eyes locked, quiet heat flickering in the silence. Then his cum buzzed. Rourke, he answered. Sir, came the static-laced voice of Lieutenant Vega. We've got 2 unidentified signatures in the maintenance tunnels. No ID tags. Moving fast. Damon tensed. Direction. Heading toward the diplomatic wing. Eta, 3 minutes. He looked at Relina. Time. To move. She didn't hesitate. Lead the way. They moved fast, cutting through auxiliary corridors lit in cold white. Damon had memorized every shortcut in the station, every blind spot, every emergency lockout. Relina followed without question, her long stride keeping pace with his. They reached the backup security chamber 2 levels below her suite. Damon keyed in an override. The doors sealed behind them with a reassuring hiss. Inside, he handed her a pulse sidearm and activated the lockdown perimeter. If they breach the core deck, he said, this room becomes your fallback. Blast doors, emergency rations, private comlink. Relina nodded, inspecting the weapon with fluid confidence. You're planning for the worst. I always do. And what if it's not enough? He stepped close, then I improvise. Something about the way he said it, flat, quiet, absolute, made her breath catch. Before she could answer, the security monitors lit up. 2 Kael'dor operatives entered the upper diplomatic deck, armor-plated, movements sharp and purposeful. One carried a shock blade, the other a sonic scrambler. Federation tech, stolen, Damon muttered. They're not here to warn, Relina said. They're here to finish. Damon pulled a second pulse rifle from the weapons locker. We make a stand. I'm not hiding, she said firmly. He met her eyes. I wasn't planning on asking you to. She smiled, sharp, radiant, and fearless. Then let's give them something to regret. Damon synced the rifles to silent fire and opened the emergency vent leading up 1 floor. The shaft was tight, but passable. They climbed in tandem, her above, him just behind, weapons strapped tight. As they emerged into the upper corridor, Relina tapped her earpiece. Left hall. They're splitting up. I'll take the front, Damon replied. You circle and flank. She didn't argue. He moved forward, silent as breath. The Kael'dor soldier stepped into the corridor, blade drawn, scanning. Damon fired once. The bolt hit square in the chest. Not a kill, but a knockout. The second operative turned too late. Relina struck from behind, sidearm firing with perfect precision. The sonic scrambler clattered to the floor. Silence fell again. Damon checked vitals. Alive. Barely. Relina lowered her weapon. That makes 2 who failed. He looked at her, breathless, glowing, unshaken. You're not what I expected, he said. She stepped closer. Neither are you. Something charged sparked between them, not born of combat, but from what came after. Trust, power, something unspoken, and it wasn't done growing. The 2 Kael'dor attackers were locked in a cryocell under maximum security, and the station's diplomatic wing was sealed under red-level protocol. Damon Rourke stood in the command chamber, giving his full report to Federation High Command, while Relina Kavarin paced behind him in silence. When the transmission ended, Damon turned to her. They want you reassigned. Off station. She raised an eyebrow. You going to drag me out yourself? I told them no. That made her pause. You did. she asked quietly. I said you were more than a diplomatic asset, that you're capable, strategic, dangerous in the right way. A small smile tugged at her lips. And what did they say? They said if anything goes wrong again, I'll be held accountable. She walked toward him, her golden eyes never leaving his. And you're still standing here. I've faced worse things than bureaucrats, like angry Ilandrathi women. He gave her a dry look. Exactly like that. She laughed then, the sound softer than usual, no longer edged with superiority. You should hate me, she said. I was difficult, insulting. I tested every limit. You did, he agreed, and I didn't break. No, she whispered. You bit. There was silence again, heavy, full, electric. She took another step closer. Do you know what that means in my culture? I'm guessing it's more than just a rude response. Relina nodded slowly. It's a mark, not of ownership, not of violence. It means you see someone as your equal. It's a challenge, and a promise. Damon studied her face. The strength, the pride, and beneath it, the vulnerability only he'd seen. Then maybe it's time I gave you another one. She tilted her head, teasing. Here, no. He reached for her hand and pulled it, gently to his chest, over his heart. Here, her fingers curled against him, and for a moment, her breath caught. You know this won't be easy. We're already living in orbit above a dead planet, dodging assassins and rewriting politics. Easy's long gone. Then what do we have? He answered without hesitation. A fight worth choosing, a path worth walking. And if my empire doesn't approve, then they can challenge me themselves. A slow, fierce grin spread across her face. Careful, Commander. I might start falling for your species. Too late, he murmured. She leaned in and, this time, there were no jabs, no games, no tension to dissolve. Just heat, closeness, and the taste of something real as their lips met. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I'll be diplomatic in public, but in private, I expect war, he said, and I'll bring it, she promised. The stars outside the viewport burned steady. Somewhere far off, politics would churn, and enemies would scheme. But here, on Proxima Station, a human and an alien noble had rewritten the rules, not with treaties, but with one bite, and the promise that followed.